in front, we've got some volunteers who dared to try to summarize the workshops that they participated in, as well as the different recommendations, because you've worked, and we really want to use these recommendations, which are from people in the field, to try to bring about change in long-term care facilities, in public long-term care facilities. So I will ask them one by one to perhaps mention the name of the workshop that they participated in, and to do a quick summary in English or French, and the recommendations that came out of them. There are 7 of you times 3 minutes. That's approximately 30 minutes. 7 times 3 equals 30. So we will try to summarize as best we can. So who shall we begin with? I'm sorry, there's no microphone. I'm sorry, Daphne. I was just handed the phone without the microphone without any other details. All right. Can you hear me? All right. So I was in workshop 1, which was animated by Marie-Ève Bédard. She's a researcher in gerontology in Drummondville, and Benoît Rassette, who is a trainer at the Conseil de protection des malades. So their presentation, in fact, had to do with the role and limits of users' committees, which was really interesting. What was really interesting in that workshop is that there was a good link between the results of research, which Marie-Ève presented, and everything that's done in practice, presented by Benoît Rassette. So we really went around all the different users' committees, what kind of situations do they face, what are their tools and their levers. So I think that we'll be able to have access to the presentations afterwards. It's really worth it to go see that workshop. What came out of this was 5 proposals, and I hope that I will summarize the discussions that we've had. One person proposed, well, we had a consensus, a unanimous consensus. So the people in the workshop said that for the residence committees, there's really it would be nice if they had individual accompaniment by people who are paid and not volunteers. That was the first proposal. The second was there's a need to have better support for the management of the users and residence committees, but also to fulfill their mission, the establishment's missions. So we felt that there was a certain difficulties in this area. So one of the proposals is to improve the support of the establishments. Then we also propose to hire resource people for the users committees and the residence committees through the QC's budget. Fourth proposal, that the establishments, we have to remember that they have the duty to consult the CUCU for the adoption of the politics to fight mistreatment for all vulnerable people. So that should be done in establishments. And then the proposal that we had was to be part of the committees that will be able to make recommendations on the content and pay great attention to the role of users committees and residence committees in the policies, because often the role is perhaps not as great as what it really is. So to ensure that we've got to see how these establishments will put into practice the recommendations made to improve their policies to fight mistreatment. And also remember that the users and residence committees can consult external resources, whether it's lawyers, etc., so as to improve their position and obviously ensure that their files are better documented to then bring about changes within the establishment. So these were the 5 recommendations. Thank you. Wonderful work. Congratulations to all the participants in these workshops. I was in the same workshop, but in English, so I'm going to do my report in English. It was 2 groups, but it's fascinating to see that the alignment was different depending on the participation of people. It was quite interesting.
In English, the same workshop, number 1, about users' committees. It was a very animated experience. The presenters were very interesting. The discussion was hot. So we talked about so the lights are very bright. It's hard to read my notes, but I'll do my best. We talked about the function, the role and responsibilities and challenges facing users committees and residents committees. We've talked about the range of their authority versus their limitations. We talked about the types of abuse that they are faced with dealing, the parties involved. There are issues dealing with staff versus users, users versus staff, family members, users, etc. It's very, very quite incestuous. The causes of abuse can be lack of respect, lack of empathy, behaviors that are caused by illnesses. People often can't control their behaviors. This causes behaviors which are maybe misinterpreted by other people. Rigid rules and regulations in different institutions. This is the way it is. This is the way it has to be. We can't change the bath hour. We can't change this. And we all know that most things can be negotiated. Another cause of potential cause of abuse is the lack of resources of all kinds, lack of training of staff, lack of time to carry out basic care, just lack of lack of supervision. Another of the challenges that the committee face are time commitment. How much time can volunteers spend in an institution? What is appropriate for the members of a committee to be walking on the floors of an institution? What is a reasonable expectation? Fear of reprisal, I think that is very, very common. Confidentiality issues. And lack of follow-up. Committees can make wonderful recommendations, but their power is limited, and if the authorities do not carry out these recommendations, it really has an impact on the credibility of the institutions. Some suggested strategies include, positive collaboration with staff and administration versus finger pointing. How can we make things better instead of saying you did it? Instead of being combative, how can we together provide quality care? A couple more issues. Some of the frustrations were expressed by committee members. I was really struck by the fact that they call themselves the useless committee instead of the users committee. I think that's very, very sad. Some of the recommendations that came out was a really strong need for outside support. Each residence committee within its respective institution is limited. Together, collaboratively with other institutions, they can form a very powerful force. So you need outside help, collaborative help, money, resources. I think the whole notion that no one wants to be on the front page of the Gazette, that has to be a last resort. But the whole main thing is don't be in an ivory tower, don't be isolated, create partnerships, create teams with outside organizations. Quickly here, just see if there's anything else that was earth-shattering. The whole notion that who do we go to? It's very, very difficult sometimes between the creation of the C3S and the CIUS. Who is in charge? The distance both in time and in space between a users committee and the powers that be can take a long, long time to connect. And I think that this leads to a lot of frustration on the part of users committees that the help and the responses are so far away. We have to find ways to shorten that distance. Let me just quickly here see what else we've got. Okay, I think basically that's it. People who were here, I know I've forgotten some things, but essentially it was create partnerships, get help from outside, don't be alone, and seek out resources.
I just add one word, there was lack of training too.
Yeah.
No. Okay, thank you very much, Cathy. Oui, vas-y, Mona. All you want.
I will speak in English as well. because it's just better for me.
And that was called Preventing the Use of Physical and Anti-Psychotic Drugs, Chemical Restraints, and Finding Alternatives. Number four? That was number four? Yeah. Oh, sorry, workshop number 4. Okay. It all started with a story, and it was a story that was quite profound of a daughter who went through a journey that nobody should go through, when basically she saw her mother being robbed of her personhood and everything that she was through the use of first physical restraints and then eventually chemical restraints. She is a caregiver and never had that experience to caregive. Most people who caregive have never caregived before, given in their life, and all of a sudden are thrown into the role, and guess what? They have no idea what they're doing, and they are frightened, and it's normal. She talked a lot about the different types of restraints, but I'm going to leave that to a little bit further on. We also talked a lot about the reality from the nurse's point of view, and that there has been a real change in the protocol and the practice of nursing, and that more and more they're trying to go toward alternative methods. The issue is one of often the staff sometimes uses alternative methods, but they really they use it in a very wrong way, and they don't understand it. It's unintentional, and they think they're well-meaning. Oh, the person's falling down a lot. Let's put a physical restraint on them, or have them have a chemical restraint because they are wandering. But what happens with chemical restraints is often people do fall as a result of the chemical restraint. Also, right now there more and more there's protocols of what to follow. Physical restraint is when you cannot, when you have something that stops you from moving and you physically cannot get out of it for whatever reason. Could be something simple as a belt that has been fastened in a way you can't remove it, to a chair that has been positioned in a way that somebody cannot get out of it. The chemical restraints, as was said, was the antipsychotic medication. And what does happen is that unlike the best practices, which says start low, go slow, often things are not done that way, and people become over-medicated and become, as was pointed out during the session, a zombie.
Mona, est-ce qu'on a une phrase comme ça en français?
We have a phrase like that in French.
12 minima, OK. Non, mais pour partir un slogan en français.
C'est un jargon, mais toutes les infirmières savent ce phrase en anglais, mais je ne sais pas en français. Est-ce qu'il y a une infirmière ici? Oh, no? OK. So, there are 6 guiding principles that the government has tried to put forth in terms of restraint use, that things have to be evaluated, in the risk of danger. It's also, all restraint should be used as a very last resort. There's so many other things you can do. It should be very well supervised, and as you may or may not know, in a CHSLD that is not always the case because of staffing constraints. People have to respect the protocol, and most of all, do follow up. Now, also I want you to know there is a document called the Model Kaiser, Kayser, Jones, that talks about alternative methods. And there are many, many methods that are an alternative to the physical and chemical restraints that are being used. Now, recommendations. Oh, one other thing. They do not talk about dementia anymore. They talk about neurocognitive disorders, just so everybody knows, and that's the way it is, because they do not want to label people in a particular way. Recommendations. We need to stop the prescription of antipsychotics with those, especially with neurocognitive disorders. And that is being done in other provinces, by the way. Okay? 2, respect and promote the rights of people. In other words, we need to talk for those who cannot talk for themselves. All right? And also have a very, very limited use of restraints and have a really good reason. And also a very short time period for whatever reason it is. It has to be evaluated all the time. We talked about micro units. Micro units are smaller units of care, a little bit like what Nicole does when you have a smaller amount of people, but do that in our long-term care facilities. And that will allow for more personalized care and also allow for very individualized care. We talked about keeping families informed and there be a collaboration, an equal collaboration on both sides, because the families know the individual and from a personal point of view as to who they are and who they were, and a staff have an expertise that they can really hand off to the families, and each one can strengthen each other. I'm almost there. 5, find out what the person's capabilities are and maximize their use. 6, leadership in CHSLDs must set examples for the staff, and they have to value the individual. 7, provide many, and I really am passionate about this one, adapted activities throughout the days, evenings, and weekends, not just from 10 to 2. 8, staff who are implementing these changes. You see, what happens often is they're not acknowledged for that change. They're not recognized for that change. And, you know, we have to make a big effort to recognize these people and encourage them to continue the journey that they're on. That's it.
Thank you very much. Merci beaucoup.
Un deuxième atelier à faire. Je vais faire ça plus vite parce que c'est lié au premier. My second one was about identity, and it's really linked to...
Est-ce que tu peux le faire en français?
Parce qu'on m'a dit de le faire en anglais.
Ah, OK.
Je peux le faire, je peux traduire.
Told to do it in English.
OK.
It's really
The users committee, because it's a one-person team users committee. We discussed the informal aspects of being an advocate for an individual. Could be a family member, a friend, and also the more formal one under curatorship, tutorship, and public curatorship. The bottom line with all these forms is that the person is normally acting very much alone versus the users committee. Strategies are similar. Develop relationship with the staff, with the people you're interacting with. Go slow in a different way. Don't be too critical. Don't be aggressive. Try and be positive. Acknowledge the expertise of the professionals. Don't attack them. And just to try and not be combative as well. Make your presence felt, but don't overwhelm the staff. If you need help, go to your users committee, go to your ombudsperson. There's help available. What I found very interesting was in the formal aspect of it, just to know that from the I've got some statistics here that are absolutely fascinating, that in Quebec there are 42,555 inapt people. Approximately 12,000 have the mandates of inaptitude, 17,000 under private curatorship, 13,000 under public curatorship. With the aging population, not dementia, but neuro something is increasing. Those numbers will definitely increase. Neurocognitive disorders.
On va juste un petit résumé puis aller aux recommandations.
OK, la recommandation.
just a bit of an overview.
Of the hierarchy within institutions. Users, committees, individuals, who's in charge? It's not my job. I didn't cause this. It's to try and find out who is at where does the buck stop? Where is the person who is really going to answer your question and help you find solutions?
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much. Do you want us to go into English now? So I was a secretary for the workshop around the personalized approach. So there was Dana Morrow and Francine Trumbull. That was their two profs in specialized education. It was a workshop that was very interactive. They did some role playing. There was a good participation of people. And well, listen, this approach is for the families, the natural caregivers and people who there's an advantage for the personnel in using and knowing this approach. And research said that there's less burnout, less overload of work, better satisfaction, better retention of personnel, better quality of care. Somebody said in the workshop, I thought this was interesting, that we don't have time to build a relationship. So we really have to go to the heart of things and do what we can to build a relationship with the person that we are caring for. And we talked about well, this approach is to meet the needs of psychological needs and accept the understanding the reality of the person, using the person's capacities, going at the person's speed, and there were maybe some answers that were more negative as well. And well, listen, there are a lot of things said, but I can go to the recommendations. Yes, please. Well, I understand. So we are engaging with the administration that was in place to evaluate things and make sure that this approach will be known, and there will be some training on that with the employees and sharing best practices. And if we know the life story of the person, we can interact with them better. So that's pretty much it. Okay, great. What workshop? It was with Joanne Ravanda. I don't remember the number. Number 2. Okay. Well, without repeating what was said, Joanne has explained the role of a person. It defends rights advocacy, we call it, and it consists in the objective is for going from mistreatment to well-being, and it's a moral obligation to intervene, ask questions, and well, because Joanne had explained as well that the system is powerful and we must accompany the families as well. That is part of the recommendations. The system defends itself. So we have to ask questions, ask about protocols without attacking. You said that in English earlier, to note the facts and put together a file so that we have credibility when we defend a position. So we don't want to attack and put people on the defensive. That's not a positive thing. So despite all the difficulties, we don't want to be in conflict of interest and the person or an external person, but that knows the person well. So ask for the policies. I said that, and we've seen also with the person in particular, it's a concrete situation of how we go from a situation that is unbearable, unacceptable, to a quality of life, and it's possible. We have to persevere, and that's what I understood through all of this. We've seen with images and with examples how we can change somebody's life in the recommendations without repeating what was already said. But what I take away from this is we have to continue giving the families tools, accompany them. This morning there was an organization like that that helps families fight the system, because the system is huge, enormous. We can get crushed. So changing organizational culture, added something on that. It starts with the words, change a culture, how you describe situations when a person can get up and walk, avoid saying that he has behavioral problems or he's difficult, or we change the term dementia for behavioral issue. So we changed it because it changed the view of the person that sees the illness and not the legitimate needs of the person. Also, stop drawing the portraits of the situation, and we know what's happening. We have to act. So it also avoids that the government have to show their colors or their political will to try and create or authorize. So we have to move, we have to act. Thank you, Joanne. So the workshop, I'm gonna start, I'm gonna try and speak in French and in English. So the workshop that we participated in, that was hosted by Madame Francine Quittenbaum, qui est
a teacher of social work at the UQAM's Special Care Counseling at Vanier College. And l'autre personne était Dana Marrow.
Other person was Dana Marrow, that also Morrow, that is a teacher and special care counselor at Collège Vanier. So they helped us with this workshop called Ensuring Personhood at the Nucleus of Individualized Care. So we started by discussing the concept of person-centered care. So it was asking to create what a person represents. So what words can we use to describe that? So there are words that is talking about values, meaningful dignity, non-institutional actions, l'histoire de vie, la culture, les éléments holistiques, l'empathie. The other part that was important that we discussed was the individuality of the person. The
Forme de empowerment. Alors,
of empowerment. So after that, we continued to discuss how we can, comment est-ce qu'on peut pratiquer les soins? Who is responsible for that? So the answer is all of us. We all have responsibility in the community and the people who work in the different areas of this person-centered care. So we have the conference. They introduced a model. The moderators.
Alors, there's 3 parameters to person-centered care around this Kitwood model, and it involves traits such as humanistic, dignified, morally ethical, mutual decisions, respect. It centers around that model. And the 6 most prominent domains include the first one, by definition, holistic, number 2, respect with values, choice, dignity, self-determination, and purposeful living. Alors, on est allé, we had a chart model, on avait des rôles, on avait...
We had roles. We did an exercise like role playing. We had something positive and then a scenario that is not negative, but just to demonstrate how typically in a center or a clinic where we have a conversation with a resident and what words we use and what effects our words can have and change the attitude of the person that we are speaking with. Following this intervention, what are the recommendations that came out of the workshop? So just to describe, there was two different role-playing models. The first one
Malignant social psychology traits. Alors, quand on parle à une personne, il y a des traits that we don't not
there are traits.
includes various traits such as disempowerment, infantilization, intimidation, labeling, stigmatization. The list goes on and on. So we had a role-playing exercise to depict what somebody might be saying with the resident versus a practitioner or somebody, a staff member that works there. Not on purpose, but we don't realize many times how our message is coming across and how to encourage the person that we're taking care of. Et l'autre, c'était
The other one,
c'était quelque chose positive.
it was something called a positive working toolkit. So how can we speak with a person so that we can discover the positive traits that include
Collaboration, play, giving, tout choses comme ça. Alors, on a appris comment
we learned how to speak with these persons pour avoir
avec la personne qu'on parle avec. Alors,
the person we are speaking with. So the recommendations that we have described together, and first we have asked
areas of improvement and to finding solutions. Alors,
so the recommendations.
on doit avoir
First of all, we have to have accreditation with the people who are working in this area, with individuals who
have a mentor on the floor to help implement these roles. Aussi, comme toujours,
also, as always,
il y a staffing problem in a sense that a lot of these services are understaffed, and we need more stability and continuity because many people go on leave because there's a lot of work imposed in this type of work, and so we need to have more traineeships and more staff available. But la chose que j'ai trouvé la plus intéressante.
The thing I found most interesting, in my opinion, I think all these people, so to have a way to open those to the community, so to be open to the community, like the students, the other groups, so they can come and to have internships, programs, and
the community and residents. I think there's a lot to be gained from that, and I think it's a very positive outcome. And comme toujours dans les instituts, d'autres.
As usual in institutions, there's other recommendations d'avoir
at a variety of times of the day, d'avoir des options pour les résidents.
To have options for the residents, all kinds of things like that. So that was something that was very interesting. Thank you for your. Thank you to our secretaries. I would ask you to leave your and for your books behind. We will use them. This is inaudible for the interpreter. Is there a point that should be added? I think we covered everything with the different presentations. So thank you. And now I will invite Joanne to come and close the conference. And Joanne and Daphne, you see, we work as a team. So I will let Joanne have the pleasure of closing this beautiful day. I didn't speak much today. Well, listen, I am without words. I'm speechless because today we have moved forward together to state clearly to everybody that we refuse mistreatment and we work for well-being. That's where we're at right now in the movement to eliminate mistreatment. We have to find solutions. We have to change individually, collectively, and I think every person, if I had to, I thank everybody, but if I don't want to forget anybody. So what's remarkable is Madame DAPHNE NAHMIASH. Thanks to her, I had closed the association not long ago, and I was going to do something else. I'm going to retire and just take advantage of the time I have left. But Daphne said, well, you can't do that. Well, I'm not going to do that alone. I'm not going to do all this by myself. Before, there was two of us, Hélène and myself, and now by myself. And she said, well, you can't quit. I said, yeah, well, I have to. But all the characteristics here of all the people here is we are very hard-headed, very perseverant, for the right reasons, of course. So it brought forward conversations that were difficult. The process of this conference had been through a winding road, but nothing compared to what people go through. The obstacles are terrible and the suffering is terrible. But the good news is we can have an impact and change, transform this suffering into good. I still believe in humans despite all I've seen through the years. I believe strongly in human beings, and I think when you change your view on things, you change things here, a little bit here, and look at what we've done. It's incredible. So I'm certain that I will repeat all of this, and I believe that we have angels watching over us, whether it be Susan's mother, Hélène, Lizelle, Lise, you all have somebody that you can name. Your husband. I thought of all the people that I haven't, some of them I haven't seen in 30 years. It's unbelievable the progress we've made despite everything. So I really believe in that. I hope we all continue the process. There's lots of organizations and a lot of people who participated in all of this in the last year and a half. So it's all in your information package. So for me, this is something historical. For years, we all worked in parallel and now in silos, and now there's like a synchronicity, and we are all these roads are crossing so that we can travel together on the same path and work together. And I think that has happened. And when I saw our lawyer sitting with the rep, the coordinator of the Paul-Émile Léger long-term care facility, who would have thought that old enemies, well, they're not enemies, but they have points of view and experiences that are different, context that is different. So we should never lose hope. And even if we were on different sides, but think of somebody who was supposed to be a partner and became an adversary, and I was very sad about that. But I've learned once again that it may be because she didn't understand. Maybe she had a point of view that was different, that I didn't hear, that I didn't understand. So one day, this person that I perceived as an enemy will become a partner one day. I believe in change. And I will end with a thought that I think I said this in the beginning, organizing this event. The whole is larger than the sum of its parts, and despite frustrations, despite issues along the way, at the end of the day, it's a wow. So thank you, everybody. It's still a wow. There's so many people that I want to thank that I don't want to thank anybody specifically because I'm afraid of forgetting people. But I want to thank everybody. This is a process. Madame Marguerite Bellet, that has now become minister for the elderly and the next generation. That's a big step that we recognize the elderly. Before, we didn't even have that, and now we do, and that announces a partnership, a one-on-one between the people that need services and people who are helping. So natural helpers, natural caregivers, that's we do that not by choice, because it's difficult and because of fatigue and because we don't have the capacity. So Madame Blais would have loved to be here today. She is at a minister's conference. She could not be present, but she wrote something for you. I've saved it in my computer, and I will call you for the next steps. So it'll be our group that we have here to put our recommendations together, have them looked at by our legal team. Can we do carpe diem on the floors, and why don't we have mini units and employees? I think they would be happy to not have to wear a costume, to eat with their the people around them, to become to live with them, to share with them, and not to be as institutionalized. That's where we're at now, I think. So thank you to our guardian angels. Thank you to all of you for having been here. Thank you for your patience, and thank you to all the organizers and people who participated. I hope I'm not forgetting anybody. And we are now moving towards the future together, towards well-being. We're going beyond mistreatment. We're not denying that it's there, but we're going to go beyond it. We're going to go towards well-being, personally and collectively. So thank you, everybody, for your presence and your work today. Thank you.
À Francine Citrenbaum qui a organisé, à nos techniciens de son.
Thank you to everybody, their techs, the organizers, the interpreters, the technicians, the technical people, the camera people, the people who served us food. Thank you to all the technical people and the organizers. It was really a big undertaking. So we're going to see each other again, not next year, maybe 2 years from now. We'll do another conference. Maybe we'll do a follow-up on some of these workshops, or maybe half days of training. Anyway, we have a fund called HÉLÈNE Rumac. We had some money, some funding, and we're going to use these funds to serve the community as much as we can. Thank you, everybody. Goodbye. Safe travels.